Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something pretty profound, something life throws at all of us, really. It's the fact that, well, not everything gets fixed.
Hmm.
We're kind of swimming in this culture that pushes quick fixes, the perfect apology, the clean slate. But what about when the problem just doesn't go away?
Right, like a chronic illness, maybe?
Exactly.
Mhm.
Or, the kind of grief that becomes part of you after a major loss, or maybe those really tangled family dynamics that one conversation just isn't going to solve.
No, absolutely not. And that's precisely our mission today, isn't it?
Yep.
We're going to do a deep dive into this body of wisdom, often linked to recovery programs, but broader too,
Uh-huh.
and see how those principles apply to these unresolvable parts of life. The goal isn't, to find a magic wand for the illness or the grief.
Yeah, because there isn't one.
There isn't one. It's about digging out the lessons on finding some kind of serenity, some acceptance, even when things are limited. It's about finding wholeness through the limitation, really.
Wholeness through limitation. I like that frame. It feels immediately less pressured because that first instinct when you're facing constant pain or conflict is just escape.
Of course. Run away. Numb it.
And the source material we looked at had this fascinating point that the drive behind seeking escape, whether it's addiction or something else destructive, it actually starts from a legitimate place.
It does, yeah. It's that fundamental human drive for connection. We're wired for it.
But the escape itself, it fails
Miserably.
catastrophically, often, because it only gives you a simulacrum of connection, like a cheap copy.
Right. It feels like peace for a second, maybe. But
Then it just leads to more disconnection, shame, anger. The very things you were trying to escape, only worse. The thing that promised freedom ends up being another cage.
and that feeling of being stuck, just completely trapped by something you can't fix,
Yeah.
it's not exactly new, is it?
Oh, not at all. We found this reference going way back to Augustine's Confessions.
Mm.
He talks about being sweetly burdened by the world's baggage.
Sweetly burdened. Yeah. Like being half asleep, wanting desperately to wake up and move on, but being held down by this heavy lethargy.
Wow, that perfectly captures it. That paralysis you feel with denial or just the sheer weight of a chronic condition. You need to relate to it differently.
Intellectually, yes.
Hmm.
But the inertia, it's immense.
Yeah.
Augustine called it the tyranny of habit. The mind gets drawn in and held captive, even against its own will.
The habit becomes the boss, even when you're screaming inside for freedom.
Exactly.
Okay, so that sets up something really critical we need to unpack right away before we even get into the steps themselves. And that's the difference between just stopping a behavior abstinence and genuine sobriety or recovery.
Yes, crucial distinction. Because we're not just talking about behavior change, we're aiming for a much deeper shift.
So abstinence is
Abstinence is putting the plug in the jug, stopping the spending, ending the harmful pattern. It's vital, obviously. You have to
Yeah.
start there. But it's just the first step.
the bare minimum.
Pretty much. Sobriety, or recovery in this broader sense we're exploring, involves an inner awakening, a spiritual shift. It's about claiming your whole self, flaws and all.
And looking back differently.
Yes. Looking back at that destructive pattern, whatever it was, with some compassion. Recognizing that, maybe that was the best answer you had at the time to cope with feeling isolated or overwhelmed.
And that it wasn't necessarily a moral failing, but a flawed coping strategy.
A tragically flawed attempt at self-medication or survival.
Yeah.
That reframing is huge. It moves away from shame and towards understanding.
Okay. That perspective shift feels foundational. So let's dive into this framework for handling the unfixable. And it starts paradoxically with complete defeat.
It does. The entire architecture, whether you're dealing with addiction, chronic trauma, illness, you name it, it starts with step one.
Yeah.
We admitted we were powerless over the problem, that our lives had become unmanageable.
Wait, and immediately powerless, unmanageable. Those words just scream failure in our culture, don't they? Like, game over. How does admitting defeat become the starting point?
That's the great paradox, isn't it? That admission, that feeling of hitting rock bottom, of utter humiliation sometimes. The source material calls it the firm bedrock upon which happy and purposeful lives may be built.
Wow. So you have to concede the fight.
You have to reach a point where you finally truly acknowledge that your own willpower, your smarts, your resources, they haven't worked. They can't fix this particular thing on their own. Without accepting that, without humility, any attempt at finding peace is just built on sand. You're fighting a battle you're guaranteed to lose.
Okay, let's dig into unmanageable a bit more because for someone listening whose life isn't, total external chaos, maybe they still have their job, their house, but internally they're constantly battling chronic pain or a toxic family situation that just drains them. How does unmanageable apply there?
That's a great point. For these kinds of ongoing, unfixable issues, unmanageable goes deeper than just external consequences. It's,
Yeah,
it's more terrifying, actually.
I so.
It means realizing you've yielded control internally, not just to a substance, but maybe to bitterness or resentment or a pattern of reacting defensively. It's that scary feeling of not knowing when you'll feel like yourself again or what state you'll be in emotionally when the next wave hits.
So it's the tyranny of habit again, but on an emotional level. Your reactions feel out of your own control.
Precisely. Your mind feels captive to these ingrained responses, even when you rationally know better or want to be more loving or patient. That's the deeper unmanageability.
So victory isn't winning the war, it's surrendering control over the outcome.
That's a good way to put it, yes. And once you've established that bedrock of acceptance of admitted defeat, then you can move to the virtue that makes living this way possible. Humility.
Not exactly a popular virtue these days.
No. But indispensable here, the sources are really clear. Humility underpins all the steps. You can't stay sober or find serenity with an unfixable problem without some measure of it.
And you need even more for happiness.
Apparently so. To live with real purpose, especially when things are tough and you need faith and courage, you need a lot more humility. It's fundamentally about accepting, okay, I'm not God. I don't run the universe. I can't control everything.
Which sounds like, well, a lifelong practice.
It absolutely is. And it requires constant vigilance against the opposite tendency, which is often this drive for perfection.
Ah, yes. The warning against imaginary perfection. I found that really striking, that pressure to become flawless overnight.
Yeah, the classic saying is don't try to be a saint by Thursday.
Right.
And it's not an excuse for bad behavior. It's a caution against what the sources call pride blindness. It's about recognizing human limits and resisting that crushing self-shame when you can't instantly fix a deep-seated pattern or accept a terrible reality.
I can see that with chronic illness especially, the pressure to be the good patient. Always positive, never complaining.
Exactly. And so if you have a bad day, a moment of anger or despair, you feel like you failed twice over. You've got the physical suffering and the shame for not being perfectly stoic about it.
So the framework is designed to fight that perfectionism.
Yes, it pushes for honesty about limitations. It acknowledges that sometimes. You're just not ready. Maybe you're not ready to forgive someone yet. Maybe you're not ready to fully accept the constraints of your illness.
So what's the guidance then? If I know I have this resentment, say, and I should let it go, but deep down I'm just not willing yet.
The instruction is incredibly simple, but oh so hard. It's simply to accept the lack of willingness.
Except that I'm not willing.
Yes, acknowledge it honestly without beating yourself up about it. And then trust. Trust that a higher power, or the process of growth itself, is working towards balance. Trust that the willingness will come when the time is right.
So don't force it.
Don't force it. The danger lies in demanding perfection now. The moment we say no, never, or insist on total control, we shut down the possibility of change. It's about trusting the timing, which is often slower than we'd like.
Okay, that makes sense. Moving from that foundation of acceptance and humility, let's talk about the ongoing work, living day to day with the unresolved. This needs constant attention, starting with that self-examination, the inventory from step 4.
Right. Now, traditionally, the inventory is about looking at past harms done to others. But when we apply this to chronic, maybe external issues like a difficult family situation or a long-term illness, the focus of the inventory shifts. It becomes much more inward.
Less about blaming the situation, more about my response to it.
Exactly. It's a radical self-examination of your own internal reactions, your patterns, your fears, your resentments related to that unfixable thing.
And that key idea again, taking responsibility without taking blame. How do you actually do that, especially if there's real guilt or shame tied up in it?
You do it through rigorous honesty, but honesty aimed at healing, not self-punishment. You describe the patterns, the feelings, the destructive thoughts, matter-of-factly, as the sources say, without judging them.
Like a scientist observing data.
Kind of, yeah. The goal is to understand and heal the shame, not wallow in guilt. It's about seeing those inner conflicts clearly, like maybe you desperately want approval, but you hide emotionally because you're afraid of judgment, recognizing those paradoxes within yourself.
That internal tug of war. Wanting resolution, but maybe clinging to the resentment because being right feels powerful. That sounds like the internal unmanageability we talked about.
It absolutely is. And once you've done that initial deep dive with step 4, step 10 teaches you to make it a daily practice, a spot check inventory.
Keeping tabs on things as they come up.
Yes. And this brings us to what the sources call the spiritual axiom for daily living. It's pretty challenging. Every time we are disturbed, no matter what the cause, there is something wrong with us.
Whoa, okay, hold on. Because someone listening who's dealing with, say, actual injustice or abuse or a devastating diagnosis is going to push back hard on that. They'll say, there's clearly something wrong externally. How is it my fault I'm disturbed?
And that's the crucial misunderstanding to clear up. The axiom isn't saying you caused the external event. You're not responsible for the diagnosis, the abuse, the layoffs.
Okay.
What it is saying is that the disturbance itself, the emotional turmoil, is happening inside you. Regardless of how unfair or awful the external situation is, you are responsible for your internal response. The thing that's wrong with us is the flare-up of fear, resentment, self-pity, anger.
So it forces you to reclaim internal agency. Stop blaming the external event for your internal state.
Precisely. You become, in a sense, the creator of your own internal reality, your attitude, your chosen response, your boundaries. If I'm disturbed, it's because my internal spiritual condition, as the sources put it, needs attention. I've let my guard down.
And this needs constant work because life keeps happening.
Life keeps happening. The peace we find is described as a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. You neglect the inner work, the outer chaos finds a way back in. Simple as that.
Okay, that leads naturally into amends steps 8 and 9. How does making amends work when the situation is ongoing, unfixable, or maybe the harm wasn't a single event, but a long, slow burn?
The core purpose of amends stays the same. It's about freeing ourselves from old patterns and committing to behaving differently moving forward. That doesn't change.
But the action might look very different.
Dramatically different. When you're dealing with, say, complex family dynamics or the emotional fallout of illness where blame is murky, a traditional direct amend could actually cause more harm. It needs incredible care.
And that's where God-given discretion comes in.
Exactly. That discretion is vital. The sources warn against this unloving determination to be honest at all costs. So just blurting out your truth, even if it's accurate, could be really damaging if it's going to wreck innocent lives or just inflict more pain.
So telling a fragile family member about some past resentment just to clear your own conscience might be selfish.
It could be deeply selfish, yes. It might not be an amend at all. In these unfixable situations, the amend is often internal. It might be a commitment to stop reacting in the old way. It might be setting a firm, loving boundary. It might be the quiet internal work of releasing resentment completely.
Ah, resentment. The big one. The thing that keeps you chained to the unfixable problem.
It's the ultimate internal prison. Holding on to resentment against a person, the illness, life's unfairness creates this cosmic link, the sources say. You're mentally tethered to whatever you resent.
Stronger than steel, apparently.
That's the phrase used. It means that person or situation is living rent-free in your head, dictating your emotional weather.
So forgiveness in this context isn't about letting the other person off the hook or pretending the situation is okay.
Not at all. It's purely practical self-liberation. Forgiveness is about cutting that mental chain. You loose him and let him go, as they say.
You set yourself free.
You set yourself free from the internal entanglement. The external reality might still be difficult, absolutely, but your internal response is no longer chained to it.
That's powerful. Okay, and underpinning all this daily work, the inventory, the careful amends, the forgiveness is step 11. Spiritual maintenance.
The ongoing practice, prayer and meditation. And again, the focus here is critical.
It's not about asking God to fix it.
No, that's the ego trying to control things again. The prayer is specifically for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out.
So asking for the right attitude, not the right outcome.
Exactly. You shift from trying to manipulate the external world to managing your internal world, seeking guidance on how to navigate the situation with grace and strength, rather than demanding the situation itself change.
Which brings us to another huge piece of this community, especially when dealing with the kind of isolation that chronic problems can create.
Oh, absolutely essential. The sources are blunt. Loneliness is described as a real hell.
Whether it's the secrecy of addiction or just the feeling that nobody understands your chronic pain or grief.
That isolation is crippling. The core insight is that we simply cannot do this alone. We need fellowship, understanding, acceptance. The community provides that lifeline.
And it's not just nice to have, it's presented as vital for survival, that stark line. We must work together and hang together, else most of us will finally die alone.
It sounds dramatic, but for many, it feels that real. This ties into the traditions, which are about group unity. The first tradition emphasizes that individual recovery depends on the group's health.
So personal ego has to take a backseat.
It does. You learn that setting aside your own demands or resentments for the good of the group actually strengthens your recovery. The individual thrives when the collective thrives. It's about interdependence.
Now, interacting within that community or with loved ones outside it, especially if they're also struggling or part of the unfixable dynamic, we need to talk about compassion versus enabling. That's a really tricky line.
One of the trickiest and most painful, often. Enabling is essentially shielding someone from the consequences of their actions.
Cleaning up their messes, making excuses.
Paying their debts, calling them in sick to work. It feels kind, maybe, but it actually allows the destructive pattern to continue comfortably. It prevents them from hitting their own rock bottom where change might become possible.
That's true compassion. It looks tougher.
It often requires immense courage. True compassion allows people, including yourself, to face the natural consequences of their actions, even when it's painful to watch.
And it starts with changing your perception.
Fundamentally, instead of taking hurtful behavior personally, try to see it as symptoms of a sick person, as the sources put it, not a deliberate attack aimed at you, but the manifestation of their own pain or illness. That shift is key.
And that compassion needs to be turned inwards too, right? Towards our past selves.
Oh, absolutely critical. Self-compassion. When you look back at your own past denial or your anger or your controlling behaviors, you have to see that person with kindness.
The person who didn't know any better at the time.
Exactly. The person who was doing the best they could with the tools they had, even if those tools were damaging. That perspective heals shame rather than reinforcing it.
And shame thrives in isolation, which is why storytelling is so central to this whole approach.
It breaks the isolation barrier. It works like great literature. Through your story, I hear my own. When someone else is brave enough to share their fears, their failures, their anxieties.
You feel less alone, less uniquely broken.
Precisely. You hear someone you respect admit to feeling insecure or afraid, and you think, wow, maybe my own negative self-talk isn't the absolute truth. Maybe I'm deluded too. It offers hope.
And the way sharing happens is also important, maintaining autonomy.
Yes, very much so. The emphasis is on speaking only for yourself. I am the only one who can tell my story, using I statements.
Not, we all feel this way.
Right. Avoid generalizations. Share your experience, strength, and hope. And crucially, let others take what they like and leave the rest. It fosters unity without demanding conformity, safety and vulnerability.
Okay, this brings us towards the end, thinking about the nature of this path. It's not a quick fix, it's ongoing. Forever.
That's the reality. There's no graduation day from life's challenges or from spiritual growth. Life isn't a command performance apparent.
It's more like a series of experiments.
A continuing series of experiments from which we learn. That's the language used. The growth process will go on as long as we last. It evolves.
And practically, there's that point about mental recovery, too. Needing time.
Yes, acknowledging the need for restful convalescence for the mind after a period of intense struggle or active addiction. That brain fog, that exhaustion people feel early on.
It's real. It's biochemical, psychological.
It's real and it's temporary. The mind needs time to heal from the constant stress. But the promise is that the mental energy does return, often stronger than before. People often report much greater clarity in their second year of recovery.
And that clarity helps dismantle that core illusion, the illusion of control.
Oh, the central paradox. The person desperately trying to control everything they're drinking, other people, outcomes, thinks they're free, but they're completely enslaved by the effort.
Spending all their energy managing the unmanageable.
Exactly. Real freedom arrives, ironically, with letting go of that control.
Which brings us back to that almost Zen-like advice. Don't just do something, sit there.
It sounds passive, but it's profoundly active spiritually. It means consciously choosing not to reactively fix or fight things you cannot change.
Turning over the anxiety.
Turning over the anxiety, the obsession about outcomes, the fear about other people, turning it over to a higher power, or just accepting the limits of your own power. Fighting fear strengthens it. Releasing the problem actually frees everyone involved, most especially yourself.
But enduring that discomfort, living with the unresolved without constantly fighting it, that requires finding some deeper meaning, right? The why.
Absolutely essential. The sources quote Nietzsche here, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow." Choosing recovery, choosing peace over resentment, choosing to live fully despite chronic limitations. You need a powerful, sustaining reason to keep doing the work when things get tough.
And the program, or this philosophy, provides that.
It offers a structure for finding that why. It gives community a sense of identity beyond the problem and a way to make sense of suffering that might have felt meaningless before.
And the payoff for sticking with this ongoing growth.
The discovery that this new life, this way of living with acceptance, is genuinely better. It keeps expanding. It offers connection, warmth, joy that wasn't accessible before. Because the principles are always applicable, life keeps getting richer, more manageable, even if the external unfixable thing remains.
Wow. Okay, wrapping up this deep dive then. It feels like a fundamental shift away from trying to fix the external world and towards mastering our internal response to it.
That's the heart of it. Serenity, when faced with the unresolvable, doesn't come from finding the non-existent fix. It comes from cultivating that internal attitude. Humility, letting go of control, self-compassion, and that daily spiritual upkeep, taking responsibility for what happens inside us.
Accepting our limitations,
Yeah.
our not godness, as the sources phrase it.
Yes. And, stepping back, maybe the core disease of our modern world is that relentless demand for absolute control, for perfect rationalization, for eliminating all uncertainty.
That constant craving for more control.
Exactly. It's a quest that can never be satisfied because life will always involve uncertainty and things beyond our control. It leads to this empty craving for more and again because we've forgotten that interdependence, vulnerability, these aren't failures. They're part of human integrity.
So the real addiction isn't the substance or the behavior. It's the addiction to control itself.
That's a powerful way to see it. And maybe that's the final thought to leave everyone with today. Just reflect. Is there an area in your life where you're demanding absolute control? Where you're refusing to accept limitation or uncertainty? Maybe it's a relationship, a career goal, your health, someone else's choices. What might happen if you consciously decided to yield that demand for control just for today? Just as an experiment. Could letting go, even a little, open the door to that unexpected peace that comes from accepting dependence, from acknowledging you're not in charge of everything?
Yielding control to find peace. Definitely something profound to sit with. Thank you for joining us on the deep dive.